Now.org to see part one of our conversation with Bamford, talking about how the leaked documents are based on intelligence gathered by the National Reconnaissance Office, the NRO, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the National Security Agency. On Tuesday, National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby urged reporters not to cover the leaked documents, saying, quote, "It has no business on the front pages of newspapers or on television. It's not intended for public consumption, and it should not be out there," he said. That does it for our show. Happy birthday to Maria Inez Taracena and Anna Osbeck. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.
.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM WBNY Buffalo.
They are our love bugs and companions. They are our pets, our family, and they make life better. When we face unexpected challenges, so do our pets. That's why we're on a mission to support people and their pets. Whether donating a bag of kibble, sharing an Instagram post of a lost cat, or welcoming a foster pet into your home, every bit of kindness counts. Visit petsandpeopletogether.org to learn how to be a helper in your community. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
That's that sound that we wanted to hear. Hello, this is L. Nathan Hare. Welcome you to our broadcast, focused on providing you insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for today and for tomorrow. Join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And of course, you all know our program is live, so you can call and you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. We're here with our in-studio audience of one, Norm Mercado. Welcome, Norm.
Good morning, Mr. Hare.
Are you able to get around with all that money you've been lugging around, you've been making out there in the world?
I'm doing my best.
Okay, we're gonna create new safety rules, so that people get out of your way. So you can transport that cash. And we're also here with Willie H., who is our resident citizen of the 21st century, who does the live streaming of the program. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan here. You can see us on WBNY 91.3 FM, website, Facebook, and we also on YouTube Live, as well as radio.
And did we have a soundbite on what went on in Tennessee with those two?
I didn't see it here, so I didn't.
All right, so we won't be able to talk. Well, we wanted to give you a soundbite on that subject. I just wanted to quickly visit with that issue for us. When I saw what went down in Tennessee, it reminded me of something that took place back in the 1960s. I don't know, you all being young might not remember Julian Bond. Do you remember him?
I've heard the name. I don't know who that is, though.
Yeah, you all were kind of like teenagers or worse, when he was coming along. He used to be the head of the NAACP. He had become a state legislator. And there was a point in the 1960s where the Georgia state legislature wouldn't allow him to sit in his seat because he had opened his mouth. This is how it works. You have rights in this country, in certain parts of this country, as long as you don't use the rights.
Wow.
You know how that works?
Wow.
It's like I give this parable about, when we talk about our civil rights, we act like civil rights are something novel, like it's something in addition to citizen rights. Mm-hmm. Civil rights and civil rights are the same thing. You don't get any extra rights. You only get citizen rights. They don't have like you get civil rights, but if you're black, you get these extra rights. You don't get any extra rights. You're lucky if you get any of the rights that are citizen rights. Mm-hmm. So I need people. It's like in this parable. Let's suppose you got $1,000 in your pocket. That's your money, right? Mm-hmm. It's in your pocket. And then you go out and you start spending some of your money and you get to $150 and you done spend $150. Now you're ready to spend the $151st. And somebody stops you, yo, Willie, what you doing? And you say, what do you mean? So you about to spend the $151st? Yes, it's my money. No. It took us a long time to get to the point that we could put up with you spending the first $150, dollars. Mm-hmm. Now, if you start spending the $151st, we might come and take the whole $1,000 away from you again. Right. You may end up with nothing, right? And so you wouldn't think that was right, would you? Well, of course, that's what civil rights are all about. Civil rights are people denying you the ability to use rights that you have as a citizen. You're not willing to honor the rights that you have as a American citizen. They're basically denying you the ability to use something that is already yours. They're not giving you something new. They're just, respecting, or you're supposed to respect what's already yours. So when people are oppressing you, denying you your rights, they're taking things away from you that you already have. They're not adding anything to you. And so that's what is going on here in Tennessee. Let me just give you a little bit. I went and pulled a little bit on this, because Willie was giving me some stuff. He didn't feel like, we were strong enough on the Tennessee legislator stuff. Go ahead and tell the truth now. So James Beverly is the minority leader in the state legislature, the state assembly in Georgia. He said the decorum issue is one of the most foolish things I've ever seen in my entire life. He said, I've been a legislator for 12 years, and it's absolutely unconscionable what they did to these young men. And what he's talking about is there are rules about decorum, in the state Senate, in the state assembly, in the U.S. Senate, in the U.S. House of Representatives. There are rules, but they wouldn't throw you out because you drop some cigarette ashes on the floor. That's disgusting. You should smoke in somebody else's building, but they wouldn't throw you out of your seat because you dropped some cigarette ashes on the floor. If you got up and you spoke about something, let's suppose that you disagreed with the support for Ukraine. If you got on the floor of the state legislature and say, I disagree, I don't think we should be giving a dime to Ukraine. That money should go to child care, in my state. You might not like what that person is saying, but you couldn't throw them out of their, at least you shouldn't be able to throw them out of their seat over that.
Right.
Well, that's what happened in Tennessee.
Yeah. You
had 6 people killed in an incident in Tennessee. 3 adults and 3 9-year-old kids. 3 9-year-old kids, not as big as your knee. 9-year-old kids, right? And people in Tennessee were upset. They wanted to fight over this, right? I mean, this can't go on. Right. So they pushed their legislators. We need for you all to stand up for us and get laws passed to reduce the possibility that this could ever happen again in Tennessee. Well, isn't that what you expect the citizens that are your constituents to do? In that,
yeah. You want them to speak up for you?
Right. That's their role, right?
Exactly.
And then when the citizens tell you this is what we want and they elected you, you are obligated to go before your assembly and say, the citizens in my district, in Memphis or in Tallahassee or wherever, not Tallahassee, wherever it is in the state that you are, my citizens want me to do something about this. Yeah. So I'm coming to talk about that.
Right.
You all are ignoring this conversation. We've been in the assembly now for an hour and a half. You haven't talked about the fact that these people have been killed. You haven't talked about the fact that the people bought the gun like a week or so before they killed these people.
Yes.
That while we're talking right now, somebody in Kentucky, killed 9 people and left 5 people, or the other way around, killed 5 people and left 9 people wounded and whatnot in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
While we're talking here in Tennessee, this is what's going on in Kentucky right now.
Right.
we need to do something about this gun crisis that we have going on in this country, and not just AR-15s. I mean, it's cute that we talk about that. You know, it looks big because the AR-15 is a menacing looking weapon, but we need to get the Derringer, you know, that shoots those little 20 caliber bullets. That, you know, you can get shot with one of those twice and not even know you got shot, right? But it's still annoying. It's still annoying, right?
Brush it off.
But, you know, whether it's something like that or it's a 22 caliber or it's a 30-06 or whatever it is that people are coming at you with, the point is that we have a gun culture in this country. People ideate around solving crises, going to their straps, going to their guns. And we have to change that somehow in this country.
Yes, sir.
Now, you can't tell me it can't be changed. There was a time in my life when I would say some really horrendous things about people that had these alternate sexualities and whatnot, you know, because I thought it was like deranged and comical. You know, I mean, it just didn't make any sense to me. But my daughter, who is now almost 50 years old, right?
Wow.
My daughter started hammering away on me. Daddy, you got to stop saying that. What do you mean I got to stop saying that? You're saying stuff that's not true, number one. It's not fair, you know, and we should not be co-signing, you know, stuff like that. Not us. We're supposed to be the people that fight for right. So we should not be doing wrong. And she badgered me until a time came when I began to pay more attention to what she was saying.
Did she bring you into the 21st century, sir?
Well, not quite. You know, I got pretty close to the 1970s and whatnot, you know. I'm working. I'm working on the 21st century stuff. I'm not quite. I'm probably 30 years away from 21st century, right? But my point is that my kids, they wore on me. They eroded all of that, you know, macho, you know, that caste system kind of thought process that was in my head. They eroded that by just wearing on me and saying true things to me and making me ask myself, are you really cool at what you are saying out of your own mouth, that what you're saying is true?
They kind of got you to look at things a different way.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah.
See, so over time, they changed my way of looking at the world. So now when you hear me talk about this stuff today, you'll hear me say, I'm not really into the, you know, alternate sexuality stuff.
Yes, sir.
That's your thing.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm into is if you have the right to apply for a job, apply for a house, apply for a loan, you know, apply to have your streets clean, have your garbage picked up, to go to a hospital and get care, you know, and so on. If those are your rights, then I'm responsible to support you in operating in your rights.
Yes, sir.
My issue about how you live or don't live is irrelevant, right? All that's relevant is if I stop you from being able to operate in your rights, your right to vote, your right to run for office, your right to get a loan, you know, and so on. As soon as I stopping you from being able to do that, then you're going to someday come and stop me. Anything I take away from you eventually is going to take something away from me.
Like last week's commentary.
There you go.
I got
there you go. Remember, right? You know, because the day will come.
Yeah.
You know,
that little parable that you gave us.
Yeah, they attack all these other people and whatnot, right?
Yes,
these are Native Americans. Let's get them. You know, these are Indians. Let's get them. You know, they got all that stuff going on, and you act like it's okay, cause y'all friends. You know, y'all out there at the bar together. But a day is gonna come when they're gonna come for you, and when you need somebody to be your backup, you're gonna find there's no backup there.
Well, this is the question I have. How could they throw the brother out of the assembly for speaking up for gun rights and speaking up for what they
because
wanted him
the
to
assembly was for gun owners having more guns and for people that don't have guns to get them to get guns.
But regardless, he has a right, as we're speaking about, to speak for the people, and we got all of these things going on around us, people getting killed. He has the right to speak up.
That's what took me back to Julian Bond.
Yeah.
Because and it goes further than that. You know, back at the end of the Civil War, you know, the southern states had basically had their power bases eroded. You know, the Northern American, northern whites basically recolonized the southern secessionist states, and they became the power. They called them carpetbaggers, right? They became the politicians and so on, right? But you can't run somebody else's space. You can't live, in Maine and run stuff in South Carolina. Sooner or later, that just isn't going to work out.
Yeah.
So you got to empower people in South Carolina. So what they wanted to do was to disempower the people that were the big landowners, the big plantation owners, disempower them, and empower people who are willing to make the resources that are under the ground and that grow on the ground in the South, to make those resources available to the manufacturing industrial economy of the North. Once they got people in place in the South to do that, they moved on. They didn't care about, respecting the rights of black people. So as soon as they got themselves, straight, that they got the right, if I'm saying this right, they got the right white people in office in the South, then they basically went back north and left the black people at the mercy of the people in the South. So what happened is you had all these people that got elected to be state senators and U.S. senators and, state assembly people and U.S. House of Representatives peoples and so on. You had all of that take place, in that period between 1865 and 1875. But then the Southern whites got back in control again. And they said, you can't sit here. What do you mean I can't sit here? You can't sit in that chair. Why can't I sit in that chair? That chair is for white people. But I'm a U.S. senator. That chair is for white people. Go outside. Right? They told the state assembly person, go outside. You can't sit in the seat you got elected in. That was what happened during Reconstruction, and all of the political power that African people supposedly had as a result of being respected as American citizens in 1865, all of that was taken away from African people. That's the same. That's an echo of what I see going on here in Tennessee. That you have these people that were elected. I think each of them had constituencies of 75 to 80,000 people in their districts. That's a lot of people that you're representing. And yet these people were were expelled from their seats, not because they did something egregious. While the state assembly was in recess, they went and started, protesting, joining protesters on the floor in the well of the state house, the legislature. And because they were protesting during the recess, that means that they weren't even convening. They were going to the bathroom, going to get coffee, during that time period. And they protested during that time period, and they kicked these people out of their jobs. They didn't just kick them out of the building, they kicked them out of their jobs, right? That's the same kind of thing that happened during the post-Reconstruction era. And I just need for people to understand what this means. If you're an African person who studies history, you feel this. You remember what it's like to have people come and take everything away from you. Go ahead.
Well, this is just a commentary real quick. What I would like to have done, because after they kicked him out, they reinstated him. And with that, it would seem that there should be apologies made. You can't just kick somebody, especially when they're doing their job and they're doing what they're supposed to do.
If you watch the meeting that took place on Monday, so one of these kids, I'm saying kids, they're 27, 28 years old. One of these young men was reinstated on Monday. The other one is up for a vote today. We don't know if that's going to go his way or not.
Right.
That's the kid. I think his name is Justin Pierce. So we'll see what happens, with his situation. But the vote on Monday reinstated Justin Jones. The issue here is if you watch that meeting, when the vote went down, it was a unanimous vote, right? So it wasn't like the Republicans, because Republicans were embarrassed, right? I mean, how do you come back in front of your own public and say you did this, that you co-signed this, right? So everybody's co-signed reinstating, Justin Jones. But the apology thing that you're talking about, if you watch the audience, even though there was a unanimous vote, not a single one of the Republicans stood up to clap when the vote came in.
Right.
To be honest with you, I didn't see many of the Democrats stand up and clap either.
Well, the question I have is this: to kick him out in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
it would seem that there would have to be. Wait a minute. Oh no. Now I'm thinking. I guess there was more Republicans.
Yes,
in the House. So that's how they were. That's how they were.
Right,
they got
right,
control of
right.
the House. So that's how they were.
If they didn't have a majority, they would not have done this in the first place.
I was thinking a little differently, but yeah.
Which is the issue that we talked about on Monday, and we'll keep visiting with this issue.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere that the Republicans, and this is not normal. In other words, if you go back some years, this never occurred. We had something called norms, in the society, and so there were red lines you just didn't cross. It wasn't that it was in the law. It's just you didn't cross these red lines, right? So if to take the decorum issue, right, you would see that people would never swear on the floor of the Assembly or the Senate when it was in session. They may swear when it's not in session and they're talking to each other, but when they're talking in the meeting itself on the record, you didn't see people using vulgar words. Now, it wasn't because it was illegal. It wasn't illegal to use vulgar words, but it was the norm. And it was the norm not just in Georgia, it was the norm in every single state legislature in the country.
You know what I noticed, and I just want to go back to the State of the Union. When I watched that, and okay, the President of the United States is supposed to get a strong amount of respect. And when I saw Marjorie Taylor Greene hollering and screaming, that is a blatant disrespect that the President of the United States
with her drag queen clothes on.
But I was like in awe of that because you don't see that, and it's like it's getting to a place now where there is a disrespect.
And remember, do you remember when Barack Obama was president?
Yes, sir.
In his first term, a guy named Joe Walsh. I forget what jurisdiction he represented, but he was a congressman at that time.
Yes, sir.
And this was I'm trying to remember what this was, what the issue was, but I think it was an immigration issue. But whatever it was, I think it was immigration. Joe Walsh jumps out and says, "You lie! You lie!"
Yes,
right?
yes.
Now I've been alive a long time. I had never heard anybody do that.
This is what I'm saying. Right. I mean, how can this happen? Now, and when you look at it and you think this has happened to 2 Democratic presidents.
Well, see, because this is what happens. See, once you open this door, it's really hard to close the door again, right? So once he did that, everybody said, "Oh, that's terrible. He should be thrown out of the legislature, et cetera," but they didn't throw him out, right? He still kept his job.
It established a precedent.
And it set a precedent.
Oh, my gosh.
So then you started seeing in subsequent, especially if it was a Democrat that was the president. They never did this to a Republican.
Yeah.
But if it was a Democrat who was president, you would see people start shouting stuff, from the floor.
And and I'm only bringing this up for one reason to say there's been so many negatives that have gone on when President Trump was in the White House. And there was a certain respect that the Democratic Party gave him, even when they knew he was incorrect.
What they've done is they've allowed Donald Trump to become the tip of the spear to destroy the democracy in this country. Because what's really at the core of what's going on with the Republican Party, they have seized onto the portion of white people that are concerned that they're being replaced as the majority population in the United States. If you get replaced as a majority population in the United States, that means pretty soon you're not going to be the governors of every state. You're not going to be the president and the vice president. We already have a black, vice president. People are, this is what some people are reacting negatively to. Now, to me, it wouldn't make any difference whether you had a Ukrainian American, English American, a French American. What would that matter to me? As long as you're a person who can actually govern, you have enough acumen that you can lead an executive administration, I'm going to support you. You know, if I like your policies, I'm going to support you for the presidency.
Yes, sir.
The issue of what your ancestry was is irrelevant to me. But that's not the case when you're a racial minority. If you were an ethnic minority, you know, you were from Slovenia, you're from Romania, you're from Germany, you're an ethnic minority, but you're a white person. Didn't have an issue with that. But if you're an ethnic person and you're from a racial minority, you're a visible minority, and you're a minority that has a negative ethnic history with the white majority, right? Generally, that's the case.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're reacting to. So the Republicans tapped into that spirit, that fear, you know, that exists, you know, within a portion of the white population. And because the people that have that fear tend to be much more uniform in terms of what they will support. As long as you say you're down with keeping them out and keeping us in, I'm down with you. Anything you're doing that keeps us in and keeps them out, I'm down with you. So the Republicans have decided that's going to be that. When you hear them referring to the base, that's what they're referring to.
Yeah.
Now, what I find despicable is the media they've actually gotten you to the point where you start thinking that when they say the base, they're talking about the base of the public as a whole. They're not talking about the base of the public as a whole. They're talking about the base of people that support people like Donald Trump. That's what they're talking about.
Right.
But they get you talking as if you're saying something different. And so you put false ideation inside people's heads. So the core of this issue, from my point of view, is that the media has made it acceptable, a part of accepted conversation, to say that these people that have this essentially race-based view of how to deal with citizenship in the United States, to make that seem like it's a part of normal. You know, there's a continuum of Americans, right? And on one part of the continuum are these, you know, don't replace us, you know, type people. And another part of the continuum is I'm okay with anybody as long as you're behaving legally. I'm okay with you in whatever ancestry you come from. In that, the media tells you that that's the continuum, but that's not the continuum. The people over here in this replacement theory group are people that would shoot you. They're people that are getting together in their hunting blinds. They're getting together in their lodges. They're getting together in their little secret meetings behind the schoolyards. And they're organizing. This is what you see going on right now. They're organizing so that they can what's the word I want to say? That they could be successful, I guess is the way I want to say it, in engaging in a race war in this country to take power away from the people they consider to be the others and to keep power or award power into the hands of people they think are the us's.
Well, it's almost like they don't care what they do, if it's right or wrong, as long as it sets with the way that their particular group is thinking. And they, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just want to hit you with a little bit of what I wanted to get on in this part, which is that the GOP seeks democracy for the nativist wing of Americans only. The very point that we're talking about right now. That's what I wanted to build this part of the program around.
Yeah.
I went to an article written by Catherine Rampel that says that almost half of Republicans admit that they're already prepared to ditch democracy. Half of the Republicans are willing to just end democracy altogether and just put us, you know, put my group, you know, in charge. So here's what the article says. Almost half of Republicans are now saying the quiet part out loud, that they would prefer to ditch the whole democracy thing entirely. This was in a CBS News and U.gov poll conducted in the middle of May of last year. The required level of May of 2021. It says the required level of, or the question that they asked these Republicans was, what is the required level of fealty to former President Donald Trump? 2, what were their views of the 2020 election? And 3, what were their priorities for the Republican Party going forward? She says the results were bleak. She said 2/3 said it was important for Republicans to be loyal to Donald Trump. That's 2/3 of all Republicans said that it was important to be loyal to Donald Trump. Not even loyal to a party platform, which, as you know, when Trump ran the last time, the Republican Party didn't even put forward a party platform. They said whatever Donald Trump wants, that's our party platform. That's the craziness that we have going on.
Yeah.
He says the same share of people said that they did not believe President Trump was the winner of the presidency in 2020. They apparently missed, when Kevin McCarthy said that, Joe Biden won. Oh, Kevin McCarthy, he withdrew that, didn't he? Okay, never mind. So new polling data shows that likely Republican primary voters are 42% more likely to vote for Trump due to the indictment than they were less likely to vote for him due to the indictment. Only 12% of Republicans said they were less likely to vote for Donald Trump because of the indictment. 88% of Republicans either were more prepared, more likely to vote for Donald Trump because of the indictment, or were just as likely now as they were before the indictment to vote for Donald Trump.
What does this say for the GOP altogether when this is the way you choose to go, and you're more likely to vote for him after he's done all this wrong
so remember,
and been indicted for all this wrong?
Right. So remember the thesis that I laid out, that the Republican Party appeals to the people that have the most base instinct. Their issue is, we've been in charge of America since its inception. And now you've got these brown people and these black people. I know the black people were here before we got here, but that's another issue. These brown and black people, they want to act like they want to be, Congress people and governors and presidents and whatnot as well. We can't have that. That population of people, it doesn't matter what the currents of issues are in the country, whether you got, poison air, whether you got energy, crises, whether you got wars going on, they don't care. All they care about is keeping them in charge.
Wow.
And so that's why they stick with Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is the vanguard. He's the tip of the spear.
But that ideology is something that's just going to break our nation down completely. We can't have that kind. I know we're to the break. I'm sorry.
But you're hitting it right on the head. So listen, folks, we got a little bit more we're going to talk about, on the second half of this hour. So please stick with us. We will see you on the other side of the break here in Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM, WBNY, Buffalo.
All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan Hare, your host. We're here with Norma Carter, who is our in-studio audience of one, and with Willie H., who is our 21st century citizen. He has a green card, and he does a live stream of the program.
I'm a citizen, no green card.
Oh, that's right. You don't need a green card.
I
That's
don't
right.
need a green card.
You got something like a Social Security card, right?
I do.
There you go. Now you're in there.
Plan to use it next year too.
I'm feeling you. Okay. So, according to Brian Wynn, president of the organization called Opinion Diagnostics, he said that the indictment, which most Republicans see as a political ploy, has only helped Trump, allowing him to increase his fundraising and his fundraising efforts, and his publicity. Now, they keep saying that. I want you to understand they're saying that because they're not saying the whole sentence. The rest of the sentence is, it has helped Donald Trump among Republicans.
Right.
It hasn't helped Donald Trump among the general population of America as a whole.
You know, it almost seems as if, just by hearing what you've said, that his indictment has mobilized them.
Right.
And they come together even stronger due to the fact that they know that now, you know, he's going through some adversity, and they're doing whatever they can.
I just need for our audience to understand who's being mobilized. The who that's being mobilized is not the general public.
Right.
It's those people that were walking around in Charlottesville, South Carolina, talking about Jews shall not replace us. Jews will not replace us. It's that population of people that have been mobilized, right?
Yeah.
And you have to understand that democracy only works as a defense against those people if you stand with other people who support democracy. That means even if you don't like people, if you don't like people that, whatever a drag queen is, if you don't like a drag queen, but that drag queen is not trying to hurt you. It's not trying to take away your right to a house, your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They're just doing their own thing, whatever makes them happy. If they're not bothering you and they're not doing anything to injure your rights or injure your safety, injure your environment, then you should be okay with those people, because there are people in this country who are organizing as we speak to take away everything you think is the artifice of America. I think you got a caller, trying to grab on right there. I just think that we need to keep that in mind. Go ahead and make your comment before the...
This is just a question. Wondering what is the percentage of Republicans in the United States and Democrats, and just
it's roughly 35% Republicans. It's roughly 42% Democrats, and the rest are independents or other kinds of parties.
And that's how come all of these races are usually so close.
That's exactly
right.
With
that being, okay, I got you.
That's exactly right. So, Will, you had a caller hang on there?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, hello, caller. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Doing great.
Well, I just wanted to say that your indignation is real. It's valid. It's worthy. It's all of those things. The problem is everyone can get indignant. I mean, the good guys, the bad guys.
That's right.
The pro-democracy, the anti-democracy. And I think what you have to step back and say, okay, what's going on here? The people in power will ultimately probably rule incorrectly. I don't care who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're Democrat or Republican, they'll do stupid things.
Yep.
If they believe they have a supermajority, they get cocky and they start doing bad things.
Yep.
And the other factor I want to put in is that democracy, unfortunately, in our Western form of civilization, is a great exporter of democracy, but it's also an exporter of capitalism.
Yep.
And along with capitalism seems to go with corruption.
It seems to be a kernel because remember, what is capitalism about? It's about controlling resources to be able to produce things that you can sell for a profit.
It's aggressive use of limited resources, whether it be, in the ground or in people. It's getting the best and highest value out of whatever thing it is that you think you own or can control.
See, so that's why you have to have laws. See, democracy only works. The thing that is unique about the American structure of democracy, or at least the way it was originally set up, I'm not sure we're there now, but as it was set up, you had a majoritarian rule structure in this society, but there were certain things that you can't even go to a majority and do or undo. So the Bill of Rights and the other rights that are established through the 26 Amendments of the Constitution of the United States, they established rights that, according to the 14th Amendment, unless I'm reading incorrectly, the 14th Amendment says that you can neither make nor enforce any provision that would erode any, I think it's refers to as a privilege or a, it doesn't say a right, but a privilege or something else You can't take that. You can't make or enforce a law but take away rights that you already have. The problem here is people have been doing things to take away rights that people actually have, and that
absolutely. I mean, you can quote the law all you want, but the people in power abrogate their responsibilities for upholding that law.
That's the right word, abrogate.
So and guess what that's based on? Who has more money?
Right.
And so you get the best justice that money can buy, whether it's paying off politicians or paying for attorneys to fight these in court.
I mean, it has gotten so bad. It used to be if I took a record and I changed the way the record was characterized, that the money that I spent was not my personal expense. It was something that had to do with my business. Like maybe I was like Clarence Thomas or something. No, that's another issue. But
Pick a different role model there. Go ahead.
But if I say that the plane trip I took, that wasn't personal, that was a part of my business, I'm changing that record. So that you could say it's just a record-keeping error, but that's not true. What I'm doing is I'm taking dollars that should have been taxed, and I'm making those dollars untaxed, and I'm doing this consciously.
So behind our Manhattan DA prosecution of Trump using the misrecorded or forged, whatever you want to call it, record, behind that is those prosecutions that is his bread and butter. Behind that is tax fraud, all sorts of actual real issues that are going on.
Exactly.
So you can't use your business, and yet it's a common occurrence. I don't think it's exactly a rare thing.
I agree it's common, but the fact that it's common doesn't make it legal.
I agree.
Right.
Just like in the early days in the earlier days of the stock market, none of the transactions were filed with the IRS.
Right.
And yet you were supposed to owe these taxes.
And in fact, you couldn't go into business unless you were involved in inside trading. That was the nature of business, right?
Yeah. So, but even when this was the participation was equalized, the thing was that for years it was not automatically reported or required to be recorded to the IRS.
Yep.
And therefore, I'm sure many transactions and proceeds went untaxed because no one reported it.
Right.
So. You have these there are actual regulatory gaps that occur that conveniently occur because guess what? They're probably pushing and lobbying to prevent that regulation from even seeing the light of day. So because it benefited the people in power. The rest of the peons basically weren't involved in the stock market. They're basically working for a living and through earnings. So we come back to if we are a great exporter of this corruption of democracy,
right?
Through that, and unless we clean up our act at the federal level right now, so we used to rely on the feds to actually, in many states, create a much better, higher playing field, if you will, higher moral plane, because the local politics were sort of. I don't know how to explain it. Somehow people were more virtuous than Congress. I can't explain it, but we had, our federal laws provided us a lot of benefits, and now that's gone away.
Right. With
the current Supreme Court and the vagaries of who is president, that's affecting how that plays out.
Right. And basically, you have 23 or 24% of the country just running roughshod over the other 75% of the people in the country. Because they've done such a great job of getting control of state assemblies and state senates, across the country, they change election laws.
Well, that's gone both ways. I mean, what I was trying to get at is that our safety net was the federal level, which was more consistent and I think more progressive over the years. That guarantee is gone.
Well,
With that being gone, that now means our state legislatures are critical to our survival.
Well, we're in trouble.
But here's the question: where's the discussion going to be? That's why people who are feeling threatened now say, "Oh, we don't need democracy; it's not working for me," and they're willing to chuck it. And so you have to sort of, convince that we have a shared common enemy here, which is the erosion of our laws because of the way those who are wealthier or more, deemed in power can manipulate them to their advantage.
Right.
And until you see an equal playing field across all races, all religions, all of that, to allow that kind of equality from the state level on up, or even at the city level, for goodness sakes.
Right. I mean, what we have to establish is if you have a right has to be the same right everywhere. It can't be,
right.
You have a right in New York State, but you don't have the same right in Ohio. Right. It's got to be the same right everywhere. That means rights are nationalized. They are part of your national citizenship. But that's what's being disrespected. And the problem I have with the media is what we're saying right now, I have heard people in the media talk about this exactly the way we're talking about it right now. But they talk about it for like 15 minutes, at one point. Then they never come back and talk about it again. They leave it on the table that it's okay for people to say that they have states' rights over things that are your national rights.
I'm sorry, were you describing our media or our politicians?
I think both of them. Both of those groups are virtually the same. The problem here is if I have the right to vote, I have the right to vote, period. I don't have the right to vote, on Wednesday in Georgia, and then no right to vote, on Wednesday in Tennessee. Either I got the right to vote or I don't have the right to vote. I have the right to apply for a commercial loan or I don't have a right to do it. It can't be a different right in every state. It's got to be the same right. But we've allowed this conversation to go on about the states' rights. And I was going to get into this a little bit later, but I'm glad that we're talking about this right now, that the way I see it is the Republicans have been successful in moving the agenda of the people that used to be the Dixiecrats in the South. They were fighting for states' rights so they could have every state, treat people the way that they wanted to treat people. That got pushed back, by the Union forces and whatnot, and that was, sort of tamped down over the course of the succeeding decades. But what seems to have reemerged here is the idea that your rights are states' rights. So the right to abortions, and as I said many times before, I personally would not. I mean, I can't get an abortion, but I would not support my woman getting an abortion.
Well, that said it right there. You said, my woman. Wow, okay.
I'm an older guy. Okay, I got issues.
Your wife now, what her opinion is on that subject. Maybe she might be a good staunch Catholic.
If she took the position that she wanted to have an abortion, I would not fight her over that. I'm simply saying that I personally.
I'm glad to hear that.
I personally would not be supportive of that. But if that's what she wanted to do, I would have to live with that because it's her body. It's not my body.
Thank you very much.
It's her body.
I think you should add that to every time you make.
Every time I say it, I got to make sure I get that. I got to get that in there.
Just get that straight because you're going to get misquoted.
They don't take half to quote it.
You may find the doors and the locks changed when you get home.
They'd be outside the campus right now saying, "I can't believe he said that. He's not really Nate Hare. He's somebody else."
I know she doesn't listen to you at home, but she might actually listen to you on the radio.
Hey, can I chime in? Oh, we got these two great minds here. I want to know, and this is just something I'm kind of wondering about, how can you get back to having everything in uniformity and keeping all of the different things that are the same state by state to be that way?
So just to take one step back, the reason why we're going to see the state rights thing go belly up with the Republicans is because it's starting to backfire on them.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're getting desperate. Because they're realizing, oh, crap, that track didn't work. We already are controlling federal government, and everyone's sort of devolving away from the federal government and making more restrictive laws as long as they're constitutional, although God knows how that's going to go eventually. Well, the Supreme Court starts ruling crazy on what's constitutional at the local level as well. But so let me tell you one of the advantages. I was researching this for another context. There's something called preemption.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happening big time now in these more red states where they're preempting the ability for the local level beyond, below the state level, to have more restrictive laws that are effectively constitutional, but they're just saying, we can't do that. For instance, in New York State, under liquor laws, each county gets to establish what its hours are.
Right.
And actually, a town could have even more restrictive hours. So it's not home rule necessarily. It's just the fact that New York State is we don't really have laws of, we don't really support preemption, if you will.
Right.
Where we would pass a law that says the localities cannot do this. It can only be done by the state. And so preemption law, and unfortunately, many of the states are now becoming in the minority in terms of overall, across all areas of law, to what degree there are or are not preemptions. So it's going in a bad direction right now at the state level. How long it'll keep going remains to be seen until those legislatures get overturned and become more balanced, or at least more Democrat rather than Republican. So that's just an example of how corrosive this starts to get, where you can have laws that prevent you from passing laws at the local level. So now we step back to, so what do we do? And I think the key is acknowledging and realizing it's not an issue of, as important as race is and as important as ethnicity and all these things are, I believe we actually share more in common based on our economic capability. Mm-hmm. And then so if those who are poor have more in common with each other, if they get past these other sort of
superficial,
obstacles.
Right, these superficial
things. And I think
things,
if we went into that bucket, we'd have way more ability to aggregate power, to aggregate pushback, and have a common enemy, if you will, which is those who are wealthier and can control these
And remember,
things.
that's how we got out of Vietnam. Vietnam began, the consensus around Vietnam began to collapse as the people that were most affected by the war began to organize amongst themselves and say, wait a minute, I don't have a stake in this. Where is Vietnam? What is a Vietnam? People started, when I was up for the draft, I had never heard of Vietnam. What are you talking about? What is Vietnam, right? And, you got all of these people that are being killed, people that are being drafted, people's lives are being destroyed and whatnot. As those people began to protest, and they weren't the majority in the country,
right?
But they were the loudest people in the country.
So now the problem is we've sort of finished waging a 20-year war without using a draft.
With Afghanistan, absolutely.
And we got smart. We didn't draft.
Right.
It's unfortunate then that we allowed a war to go on under a lie, well, not the Afghanistan part, particularly the Iraq part.
We took the Tonkin resolution that had nothing to do with Afghanistan at all.
But once we started drafting, we were in trouble for having a war that long under a draft.
Yep.
Any war if World War II had waged on for that long, we could barely go into World War II. Remember, we had our great icons of Zion, icons of industry in the form of Henry Ford, luminaries like Charles Lindbergh, and who were preaching peace.
Yep.
In the guise of we were protecting industry and relationships in Nazi Germany.
Yep.
And so, but they looked like pacifists and non-interventionists.
Exactly.
And but to come back to it, I think if we work more at our economic class and try to get over our unfortunately hardwired practically, only follow our own tribe, then we would have more success at pushing back, and so it's creating coalitions that are truly on the same side of it, and it really, I think, is based on income than anything else, and ability to acquire wealth.
So, James, in answer to my question, you're basically saying that we have to kind of achieve kind of a monetary parity between the social classes, between the poor, middle class, and the rich, and if the poor and the middle class kind of come up, which is, I don't know how that's going to happen, but if we come up to a level where we're in a kind of parity with the rich, then that would change some of the voting questions and the different things, and we would have more say.
Think of it like this. The people who are getting hurt most are the people that are voting the least. We got to get to people that are being affected by these policies. They got to come out and join. The very thing that our brother is talking about is what has to happen, irrespective of whether you're a Senegalese, or you're Mahatma Gandhi or whatever it is you are. You got to set that stuff over on one side of the table and look at the other side of the table. You need housing. You need medical care. You need access to transportation. You need buses that actually go where the jobs are. Things like that. You need to get people to understand those commonality issues. Those commonalities are so much more important for the quality of life that you're going to be able to live than whether or not you're Senegalese or whether you're Native American or whether or not you're Black or you're German or you're French. Those distinctions, they may be cool when you're talking about your family history, but they're not going to help you eat. The things that are going to help you eat. We need to get together on those issues and stop letting people divide us.
Here is the voting is important, but the problem is right now there's obviously apathy in voting because people don't really feel that, at least those in modest terms and even in the poorest terms, they're not accomplishing anything because, to be quite honest, their choice of candidates are not all that
horrible,
different. I mean, because we have all sorts of ways to block candidates getting on. We got it unnecessarily complicated and restrictive to get on the ballot. We've got a lot of legal challenges that can throw you off the ballot. And some of them are very legitimate for some of them are good reasons, but fortunately in New York we have liberalized a lot of these issues of throwing out petitions for over trivial issues like it wasn't the right this or that. But I think I want to bring up one other little issue, and it's sort of a side thing. I don't know if you went to, I think it was the last time Ralph Nader was in town some years ago, over almost 15 years ago. He was advocating that people get together and form their own sort of sub-political group, independent of a politician, that actually amasses a significant number of people and money to help pay their way through, whether it be, donations to the right people and candidates or whatever it may be. And he argued that unless you had a significant number of people within the congressional district levels for federal effect, nobody would pay attention to you. And so if you come up with a broader coalition, maybe particularly across within economic boundaries, for instance, those who are less well off and are trying to move up and so on, you could give a voice, of course, but you'd have to aggregate it through those dollars. I mean, I don't know how well that took off or what have you, but this is essentially what's happening in super PACs and stuff.
Right. Well, think about the experience of Ross Perot. Ross Perot ran as an independent. So even after the primaries were over and you had a Republican and a Democratic nominee, you still had Ross Perot as an independent.
Right.
Because of his effect on the race, this was, I think, Bill Clinton's race, his first race. Because of the effect that Ross Perot had, Clinton actually won with something a little bit less than 44% of the vote. Whereas he would have had to have at least 50.1% of the vote in order to.
Unfortunately, under our, with few exceptions now, which ironically is that Georgia, I believe, has runoff elections, and so does New York City now. Why we don't have it here in Buffalo? I think that's becoming a burning question, and because we get into a lot of trouble where all it takes is a third-party candidate to thwart an insurgent.
All right, and remember, every structure you create has its own pros and cons. There's always going to be some parts that are great and some parts that you don't think work so well.
Virtually all of Europe is on runoff.
Right.
And have been.
So that's what you want to look at.
We have to get out of the majority, winner takes all majority.
Yep.
That's going to create more problems because, to be quite honest, we know there are third candidate runs that are actually designed to actually favor one or the other candidate.
Right.
They're not really running to win. They're running to draw votes away.
To draw votes away from whoever you think is the weaker candidate in the first place.
Particularly in the primaries. We have phantom candidates who pop up and all sorts of nonsense. And so the only way to solve that is to change the way we count these votes in terms of how they ultimately looks at you have a first choice, second choice, third choice, and it's a weighted issue.
Right.
And it's either an instant runoff or you have a second election to pair it off. That's what happened in New York City. I'm not saying they got the best candidate, but they got what they got.
It creates a completely different dynamic, and there's more democracy in the that runoff process than the way we have democracy right now.
And if it's done right, you're not just voting for a party line. Everybody can vote independently and based on policy, based on the issues.
Right?
Not the
exactly.
politics.
Yep.
Well, thank you for answering. So basically, you're saying it boils down to the vote, and in this particular way, it can change the state-to-state thing that's going on, and we'll get back closer to the democratic way of doing things that we used to know.
But it's hard to change the vote without amassing the money to be able to do that, to flex that power, to be able to have lobby and get the current legislators on board to be able to make these changes and bring enough heat on them for their re-elections that they'd have to go along with it. Otherwise, they'll be thrown out of office.
Okay.
Yep.
Monetary.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you so much. Look forward to talking to you guys on Friday. Thanks, man. So, he hit a lot of what I was going to focus on. I just wanted to quickly hit on this document leak, where we only got a minute, where these documents that show where the Ukrainian forces are, where the Russian forces are, and so on. How did that all come about? I don't know who did this and whether they were trying to favor. I don't think they were trying to favor the Russians or the Ukrainians. I think that this was somebody who, you know how when you're bored and there's nothing on TV that you want, you start channel surfing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
and you come across a show and it's got a title. You say, "Oh, I like that title. Let me go look at that program." I think this was somebody who's doing that equivalent of channel surfing, but doing it on the internet, that came across a site where somebody had put these documents on. I think was a Discord was a site that they found this stuff on. Put it on that site, and somebody came across it, and they began to copy it out to other people, and it began to get known that this information was out there. But I don't think this was somebody who personally had a direct political agenda, as much as they just came across something that, wow, you see this, and leaked it out. It probably was somebody who works for a defense contractor, or somebody who works directly for the Defense Department, who accidentally, in the course of doing something else, attached this set of documents as an attachment to something that they were sending out to someone else. So whatever the case, I don't know what it means for us in terms of the effect that it's going to have on the progress of the Ukrainians' resistance to the Russians. I'll do a little bit more work on this. I can't really talk more about it right now because we're out of time. But we'll get back on this on Friday and give you a little bit more information at that point. Thank you all for listening to us and supporting us. This is a really great show, great input. Look forward to talking to you all on Friday here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY. We'll see you all then.